Mabrika! Welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk Taino. I'm Priscilla Colon, co-founder and creative here at Casarito, where our mission is to promote the Taino language and culture. Today I have a fun episode for you. This is part one of a two-part series on Taino symbols. Now this is something that I've been researching over the past few months because I got a question from someone that said, I don't think most people know where these symbols come from. Would you mind letting us know? So today we're going to talk about the first three symbols, and they are Yucahu, Atabey, and Niguali. Now don't worry, we're going to go through and find out what each of these words mean and where we first heard them. So let's first start with some chronicles. This is Account of the Antiquities of the Indians by Ramon Panay. And he says, each one of them, when adoring idols in their homes, which they call semi, observes a particular manner and superstition. They believe that he is in heaven and is immortal, and that no one sees him, and that he has a mother, but he has no beginning, and they call him Yucahu Bagua Ma'ot Rokoti. Now, you can tell that Ramon Panay was a friar. He has very specific perspective on what the traditions of our ancestors were. So let's break down what he's talking about and analyze it a little bit more in depth. Let's look at that first part where he says, when adoring idols in their homes, which they call semi. Idols in this case refer to semi, a physical representation of our ancestors. You'll notice that this original symbol for Yucahu can be seen over and over again in these three-cornered stones. Many of these stones appear in museums around the world. Now let's take a look at another part of that text. Don't worry, we're going to explain all of this and put it together. They believe that he is in heaven and is immortal. So, many of our spiritual leaders believe that Yucahu symbolizes the sun. You know, the thing that is in heaven, in the sky, and that the sun is the one that provides plant energy for things to grow. As I mentioned, Yucahu is represented by the three-cornered stone. And our ancestors used to bury these three-cornered stones in the kunuku, that is the farmland or garden, to help plants grow. So basically, these three-cornered stones were a representation of Yucahu, the sun energy that would help plants grow. But where does all of this kind of come from? Who is actually Yucahu? Let's take a look at this last part of the quote. He has a mother, but he has no beginning, and they call him Yucahu Bagua Ma'ot Rokoti. If we break down the words Yucahu Bagua Ma'ot Rokoti, we see the real meaning of this name. Yucahu, as we learned in other lessons, means breath or soul of the yucca. Get it? The thing that gives the yucca life. And we know that our people planted a lot of yucca, and it was important to them. Bagua, the second part of his name, means the sea. And Ma'orokoti means without a grandfather or male ancestor. So in our oral traditions, Yucahu Bagua Ma'orokoti literally means breath or soul of the yucca, the one who gives the yucca life, and he's represented by the sun. Now it's important to note, he is our oldest male ancestor, but he is not the first or oldest ancestor. In that quote, we know that he has a mother, and that mother is Atabey. So let's learn now about Atabey. Let's read what Ramon Panay says. They call his mother Atabey, Yermao, Guacar, Apito, and Suimaco, which are 5 names. Now I have to warn you that depending on who wrote the chronicle, those names change. Sometimes there were fewer names. Sometimes those names were put together with different meanings. So that is still in contention. However, we do know one thing. Most people agree on Atabey, Atabex, Atabesh, or Atabeira. She is the female personification of Yaya, the Great Spirit, and she is our first ancestor. That is our ancestral mother spirit. Other indigenous traditions of the Americas also have a first female ancestors, such as Sky Woman from the Haudenosaunee oral traditions. And it makes sense that our Taino ancestors would be matrilineal, that is, that they would follow their family lines from their mother's family, because we all come from women, and that is why women were held in such esteem. And I'd like to point out that it is not uncommon for many of the oral traditions to talk about people being born from women without any male intervention, no male ancestors. That happens in a lot of different traditions, whether it's Egyptian or even biblical traditions, where the woman has children without actually needing to have a male partner. So, is this strange? Well, it happens in the animal kingdom. There are certain varieties of snakes that can impregnate themselves and have live baby snakes without having to have a male partner. So I think a lot of these oral traditions are also based on observation of nature. We don't really know, but I'm sure our ancestors were trying to figure out, or at least trying to create stories to let us know where we come from.
You're implying that a group composed entirely of female animals will breed?
No, I'm simply saying that life finds a way.
So where does this symbol of Atabey come from? Well, it comes from the Caguana Ceremonial Center of Utuado, Puerto Rico. We see this symbol as a petroglyph, that is a rock carving, in one of the central batey, that is a plaza. This petroglyph was called the Lady of Caguana. Now, it is believed that this is the symbol for Atabey, which means Mother of the Waters, and that she symbolizes fresh water and fertility, due to the fact that you can see her gender from this picture. And you'll notice that the webbed feet that she has are associated with the coqui frog. And we know that the coqui frog is a symbol of springtime, of fertility. And that is why people believe that this Lady of Caguana is Atabey. Now let's talk about the last symbol, the Taino baby. You may be very familiar with it. And no, it's not a pineapple. The crisscross patterns are there for an important reason. So let's take a look at where we see this symbol. In Taino Naiki, the word for baby or infant is ni guali. It literally means water child. Now you see this symbol in many petroglyphs. This one here is in Cueva del Indio in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. Shout out to my family in Arecibo. That is where my mother's family is from and where most of my cousins still live. So, how do we know that this is a baby? Well, the first thing you should notice is the big eyes and the big head and the tiny little body. It looks like it has been wrapped up, and that's actually where the crisscross pattern comes from. So if you look on the screen, you're going to see cradle boards. These are the traditional ways in which our ancestors used to carry the babies around with them. They would snuggle them up nice and tight with the little crisscrosses so that they would stay in place while they were being carried on their backs. Many of the chronicles state that Taino women carried their babies on their backs on a cushioned wooden board that held the baby's forehead for safety. Here are some examples of Navajo cradle boards. You'll notice the crisscross patterns and that big loop that kind of looks like a giant hat on the top of the baby's head. I think that's the top part of the cradle board. That part can also be adjusted so that the baby's head would lay flat against it, and especially when they're infants, their heads kind of wobble around, it would kind of keep their heads in place so that they wouldn't get hurt. Isn't that cool? Wasn't that a fun lesson? You got to learn Not only where the symbols come from, but you got to see real-life examples of the symbols on rock carvings or petroglyphs. We also learned quite a few Taino words along the way, so let's review those one more time. Semi, ancestor spirit, nature spirit, or its representation. Yuca, cassava or manioc. Hu, air or breath. Bagua, sea. Ma or mat, no or not, or without. Orokoti, grandfather or male ancestor. Yucahu bagua, ma orokoti, our oldest male ancestor, literally breath of the yucca, sea without a grandfather. Kunuku, farmland or garden. Yaya, great spirit, spirit of all spirits. Atabey, mother of the waters. Koki, koki frog. Nikwali, baby or infant. Next week, we're going to continue with Taino symbols. You're going to learn about 3 new ones. They're very famous, and you're going to be able to see them on actual rock carvings. But we're going to learn a little bit more about how they're related to our oral traditions too, and some controversy about what they could mean. In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay in the know about all of our amazing events and to keep practicing your Taino. It's always good to go back and look at some older lessons and relate that to what you're learning today. In the meantime, tay karaya guaitiao nagu.